All right, so we have quite a few updates to talk about in regards to those latest round of Nintendo Switch manufacturing leaks that we talked about right here on this channel. And yes, indeed, while some people want to write those off as entirely fake, and the renders are admittedly created CAD files from somebody who had the exact dimensions of the prototype of the console, the actual look at the PCB board with the Joy-Con shell casings have been confirmed not to be 3D printed or anything like that. It would be incredibly hard to fake, and you'd have to spend a whole heck of a lot of money to fake, and that is what is confirmed to be legit. Even some direct references with shipping data that has shown that prototypes of the Nintendo Switch 2 have been created with this same code name, which is X6. One thing it is now clear that this leak is not, however, is direct confirmation that the Switch 2 is in full-on mass production, and that this was coming from somebody who pulled something off of the manufacturing table, who was assembling the units themselves, similar to that claim that we saw recently where somebody who had uploaded their badge ID from Foxconn claimed that this thing is actually called Switch 2 and there's a giant Switch logo on the back with a 2 next to it. No, that's not what this leak is tied to, as there's now a lot more data that has come to light. There's also some accessory manufacturers hopping in and getting involved in this conversation with how much they may be involved with producing accessories for the Nintendo Switch 2 right now. And one of them just straight up saying that the leaked images of the prototype are legit and real. So there's a lot of different implications with that we have to unpack. Also, interestingly enough, while everybody's on high alert for some kind of Switch 2 reveal to be coming soon, maybe September's not looking as likely, but the first week of October or the second week of October, or even just the last week of September, amongst all of that going on, we now have a very well-known leaker by the name of Pioro making a surprise return to social media. So there's tons of details to unpack today. We're going to get on the same page with everything. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And we have to first start off by talking through some of the images that you might remember if you watched my video that went up in the morning. I did not post these images directly in my video. Now I'm now going to do so because, just to be totally transparent with you guys, a bunch of people went ahead and did it, and it doesn't seem like anybody's having any problems. But if I choose not to post something for the fear of a potential channel strike, you guys can't get mad at me in the comments. The pictures are out there. If you do basic research yourself or click the links in the sources description, you can see everything. But nonetheless, I know 90+% of you guys super enjoyed the video, super enjoyed everything, and were positive about it. I'm speaking to the 10% of the negative comments that I read on that. So nonetheless, it seems to be safe to show these images on screen. We're not talking about like the Lego company, which just hands out channel strikes if you talk about something that is leaked. And you know, Nintendo may or may not even choose to strike channels if this is in fact legit information, because them striking a channel, to be fair, does exactly confirm that it's a real leak. So they may not want to get involved with all of that. I'm still learning this as I go. But one thing I want to stress with the images, because there's some confusion around this, everybody just says that these renderings are just straight up fake. But what you have to realize is that the person admittedly created this CAD file that you can go through, kind of similar to what accessory manufacturers use in order to know the exact dimensions of something that they are working on, right? So it is a correct, accurate size rendering. You have like all of the exact specs and details of the console, but it is not something that was produced by Nintendo. It is, however, files that are legit used for manufacturing purposes from an accessory and console standpoint. So there's still relevant data within these CAD files, and the claim is that the person who rendered them did have the exact info and dimensions based off of those images that we saw go up of the actual shells of the console with that PCB board and the Joy-Cons, and that's where they got the information to create said CAD file. So you can't just say one's fake and write it off as no legitimate info, because the idea here is we are looking at renderings based off of the previously leaked information of the prototype, which we will also deep dive in a moment as well. But one thing I did want to clear up that I've seen a lot of people have some confusion about has to do with one of the buttons on the back of the Joy-Con. For some reason, I saw it on a lot of videos and a lot of comments that people thought, why would Nintendo include like a sideways button on the back of the Joy-Con that's a brand new one that's there, some kind of new trigger button? Well, no, it's pretty obvious if you look at how this Joy-Con would go into the controller with a press-in type of magnetic suction feature like we're expecting. Instead of a rail system, it's essentially a press-in, and magnets, they do end up holding the Joy-Con into place, but with mag switches, something that is an electromagnetic pulse, it is not something that is just like your fridge magnet that you could easily pull apart. When it's engaged, you're not going to be able to dismantle that Joy-Con Joy-Con or pull it off the console. When it is not, you would have to send some kind of signal to the console to release that charge, and that's very much most likely what this button is on the side of the Joy-Con. So that would be your disengage button, essentially replacing that very small circular button that we can press in to slide up the Joy-Con off the current Switch. That's 100% what this button is if it's actually there in the finalized design, at least in my opinion. One other thing I want to point out from the rendering is that we did have those previous manufacturing leaks from Vandal and MobaPad and others that were basically claiming there's actually a new button beneath the home button on the current Switch 2 design of the Joy-Con, because the claim was, if you remember, that these accessory manufacturers were able to field the Nintendo Switch 2 through an opaque box. They could not actually see the console themselves. That's just how secretive Nintendo is with this thing, and it honestly sounds like exactly something Nintendo would do. Well, anyway, the claim was that there was an additional button that was right beneath the home button, which also leads into the idea of this leak being legit, because you could say, well, that person that created all of this maybe just knew that that was the leaked info and that's why they did it. However, that piece of information came from multiple sources around the same time, and unless if they were coordinating with each other, it seems like a strange claim to make, and then we see it pop up from completely separated sources claiming to have that same info. So I'm personally believing that yes, there is an additional button on this Switch 2 future Joy-Con that we will see, and it's most likely, if the leaked specs that were put out around the same time as these console shell and renderings went live, that yes, this would probably be something like a mute button for the microphone, because we talked about that the Switch 2 apparently will have a built-in microphone. It's not clear if that's on the Joy-Con itself or if it's on the console itself, but you would want to have something similar to if you hold a PS5 controller, you can hop online. It's not the best audio experience, but you can legitimately have a full voice chat audio experience from your PS5 controller, and you have a mute button right there on the controller to mute the microphone when you don't want to be talking to a bunch of people online. It's pretty the straightforward feature that you would need to include if you're going to have an on-system microphone. So I think that's kind of more or less the no-brainer solution to what that button is likely going to be used for, and I'm personally excited about the claims that Switch 2 might have a microphone on board. I think it leads credence to the idea that Nintendo will have on-system party chat, which I think it's finally time for them to do, and I think they will do this next generation. And if that is one of your core features of your console, it is great to just include it as an out-of-the-box solution where you don't have to go buy additional accessories to chat online, but of course you still will be able to do it through third-party headsets, wireless headsets, and things like that. Okay, so the next thing I want to point out from the images is actually the size difference from the original Switch, because if you want to get an idea for what this thing is supposedly going to be in terms of total size when you're holding it in your hands, it's significantly bigger than the base Switch console, and there was some confusion around the render of this console. It seems like this user just used the exact dimensions of the Switch base model to use it as a comparison, but they included like an OLED style screen, so a lot of people were thrown off, like, why is the bezel so much smaller on a base Switch? Well, think of this as the base Switch, and the OLED model and the base Switch are essentially the same size. So think of it as the Switch you have today, either one, but compared to the bigger Switch 2 footprint, the console footprint itself is significantly larger. That, of course, would need to happen in order to support the rumors of the 8-inch display that we've seen that this thing is supposed to support, and that is coming from numerous sources, incredible names, even Nate the Hate chiming in on that, VGC, Eurogamer, many others. So I'm a believer in the 8-inch display, and that of course backs up that theory. Now then, the big picture that was going around that is the most legit out of any of them, if you want to walk away with one piece of information that is probably a legit look at the prototype for a Nintendo Switch 2, it is this photo right here, and it does have to do with the shell casings for two potential Joy-Cons that do have, interestingly, the player count, which is on the side of the Joy-Cons right now. It has those front facing on these. You can see all of the different button cutouts with that additional button like we talked about, and the PCB board actually later on even got some people like fully outlining where everything would go for this console, as you can see here, which is really a nice thing to look at to give you an idea of all of the components of where things will go within this said console. And one thing that you're going to notice is, well, there's a USB-C dock port, and there's also a USB-C port on the top. Now, I hope this is a finalized feature. One idea is that this could just be something that is only used for the prototype development kit that they were potentially dismantling whenever this photo was taken. The other idea, though, is if if this is supposedly a PCB board that's going to be close to finished or a finalized product, Nintendo will actually ship this thing with a USB-C on top as well, and that would solve for the issue that when you have the kickstand out, you're still going to be able to charge this console, which is a big design flaw if you're on the go and needing to charge the console right now while you're gaming. You literally can't do it with the existing kickstand that comes with the Switch. This would be a solve for that. I've seen some theories where people think maybe Nintendo's going to sell us an additional screen for stuff like the DS NSO library of games later on. That's a like far-fetched possibility, but still a possibility, I would say. And then there's even the idea that in addition to the 3.5mm headphone jack, like maybe Nintendo just wants to give you more compatibility with different headsets. And there's a lot of headsets that come out now that have USB-C for their audio interface and to be able to use the headset at all. So there's definitely a strong possibility that that's what this is referencing as well. Okay, and from there, to provide some more evidence that it does seem that this board is entirely legit, there was previously some shipping data that was tied to Switch 2 prototype units that were being tracked by various different Family Boards users and people that deep dive this type of stuff. Well, it was noticed that one of the code names referencing the model of the Switch 2 prototypes that appeared in those previous shipping manifests had the code name X6. And this board, if you do a dramatic zoom in on it, does have an X6 marker on there. Again, a very big coincidence if this is just a faked piece of information that leaked online, but there is this post on Our Gaming Leaks and Rumors that I want to read through with you that kind of helps summarize this a little bit and why this isn't the current mass production type of board that we should expect. As you can see this, the leaked PCB has X6 printed on it, which matches a code for an earlier Switch 2 prototype. Here's the image on a PCB showing the X6 code. This indicates that the leaked photos are from an older version of the Switch 2. So although mass production could have started, these leaked images don't indicate that. From what others said in the comment section of the original post, the current Switch 2 revision is X8. TLDR, the leaked photos are legit, but an older revision, not a mass production ready unit. So I want to spend just a second of time on that claim right there, because if they're legit but not mass production ready, well, couple things. Prototypes are prototypes, so it's not necessarily the final ship to consumer product, but it is probably Nintendo being pretty far along with this console in the idea of the feature set it's going to have and what kind of components are going to be packed into this console at launch. So all of that to say, this is probably a close to finalized unit, but not necessarily a mass production ready unit. So things like that top USB-C port can potentially go away. Certain little features here and there might not be one-to-one with what we ultimately see shipped at retail, and this is not clear-cut evidence that the Switch 2 is in mass manufacturing, but I do think that that's happening soon if it hasn't happened already. This X6 indicator does add a lot of credibility to this being a legit finding though, and then you also have the accessory manufacturers, a couple different companies hopping in to chime in on this to kind of add a little bit more context to the entire story. So you can first see this post from Our Gaming Leaks and Rumors, which reads, gaming accessory manufacturer manager says that the Switch 2 leak is real. And they reference a Weibo post there, which is a Chinese version of Twitter, essentially. We're not going to go through all of that, but that's the claim there, is that there's that particular accessory manufacturer chiming in on it. Then there's also Satisfy getting involved in the conversation, where somebody says in a reply to these leaked images being discussed online, and says, this looks much more sleek and higher build quality than the current Switch, which makes me happy. I was hoping for slightly bigger grips on the Joy-Con to accommodate my man hands, but this will do nicely. And then he tags at Satisfy Gaming, get on it. And Satisfy Gaming, the official account on Twitter, does reply, already ahead of you. And while that is not in any way, shape, or form concrete information that they are for sure making accessories and grips for the next generation Nintendo Switch right now, they could just be saying like, yeah, we're gearing things up, we're gonna be supporting a lot of accessories for the next console. You have two different accessory manufacturers chiming in on this, kind of leading some credence to the idea that these leaked images are indeed legit, and that potentially the dimensions and even the CAD files are legit because they're based off of the leaked images. So all of that to say, obviously nothing's confirmed until Nintendo finally comes out and says something themselves, but there's a lot of different parties chiming in on this, verifying the information, essentially coming to the conclusion that yeah, that prototype unit picture of the Switch main board and all of the components we saw, that's a real image. The CAD files were created by a user who knows how to do that. But all of this ties back to, does any of this mean that the Switch 2 reveal is imminently right around the corner? And that's where things get way more cryptic and hard to predict, because if you've been a Nintendo fan, you know just how hard it is to call what they're about to do. It seems like the 18th was the perfect day, if there ever was one, to announce the trailer for the Switch 2 going live the next morning on something like the 19th. that clearly did not happen. We do have the return of Pioro being all cryptic on Twitter again, getting a lot of people talking. You probably know this individual because they were leaking all types of first-party Nintendo announcements ahead of direct presentations. Nintendo got wise to this stuff and stopped creating new game pages on their back-end website because they figured out that's where the leaks were coming from. Essentially, some employee or maybe Pioro themselves were gaining that information and posting it online. Well, Pioro just completely deleted their account, went into the dark for quite a while, although they did get into an interesting conversation. I was actually in a reply thread with them because I was asking them to call out Samus Hunter for saying they had inside info about Emio the Smiling Man, and Pioro actually responded and said, maybe not this time, indicating that Samus Hunter's info was surprisingly legit, and once we got the trailer and everything came to light, it was legit info. So Pioro apparently still has their connections to some level, but they haven't come back frequently since they just kind of went dark online after the interview with the reporter online that essentially told that Pioro's source was an employee of Nintendo of Japan, according to them, and he didn't think they would say that out loud. Anyway, he's back and saying this, PIH and RAH. Now, technically RAH was posted first, so I read that in reverse order, then PIH. Now, maybe tomorrow there's going to be some more codes. There might already be some that are uploaded right now. It is not clear what this is. This is like some cryptic tweet stuff that maybe he's referencing, the letters that stand for something. Maybe he's talking about Pokemon. I've seen Rapidash brought up a lot. I don't think it's any of that stuff. I think it's going to remain unclear until he gives us further clues. And is this even tied to all of the hype that's going online with Switch 2? Maybe not, because Pioro has trolled us like this before when they posted that picture of Nintendo World Championships and there's like 4 different Switches on the front of that original NES cartridge that they posted, and they were literally just teasing an NES World Championship reveal, but everybody thought it was Switch 2 because it had those Switch lettering on the actual cartridge itself. And so that's not what's necessarily going on here. We don't know this is even tied into Switch 2, but I thought it was interesting timing for Pioro to make a return when everybody is at an all-time high with hype and speculation around when Nintendo might reveal this console. So buckle up, kids. It's going to be a long ride from here until we finally get the official confirmation from Nintendo with what they're doing with their next-gen console. I'm personally game for all of it. I don't get let down or discouraged when Nintendo doesn't do things in the timeline that we think they might. I actually enjoy the hype train and seeing people get really excited about something and then maybe we have to wait just a little bit longer. It makes it that much more fulfilling and satisfying when we do finally see the reveal for this thing, which I'm still on Team 2024 personally. This hasn't shook any of that for me, but the question is when. Will it be the end of September? Will it be early October? Will it be in 2024 at all? That's up for you to decide, but I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, what you make of everything we talked about today. Are you in the belief that yes, indeed, we have seen some prototype images of the Nintendo Switch 2 and these are legit? Do you think it's one of those things that this is like the Switch 1 swerve that was just totally fabricated and looked absolutely real, like that oval controller that ended up not ever being a real console, but it was tied to a patent? Do you think we've just been bamboozled here? Are you in the mindset that the reveal could potentially still happen this year in 2024, or have you kind of let your ship sail to 2025 now at this point? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.